Hi, how's everybody doing today? Clint the audio slash photo guy here. Just wanted to show you the state of the Fuji camera collection. There's been some recent changes, so figured I'd show it to you. I started with Fuji a couple years ago. Whenever the Fuji X-T3 came out, I forget how long it's been. These COVID years have been sort of a blur. But I got the XT3 because I wanted kind of a fun camera that was smaller and lighter than my main Nikon full frame camera setup. And the XT3 with the little 35mm f2 lens, kind of the Fuji lens, was kind of like the poor man's Leica. And I like the idea of the dials on top of the camera because I hate going into menus and trying to find settings. There's so many settings on these digital cameras nowadays that the dials are just a refreshing change. You got your shutter speed, your ISO, and your exposure compensation right on top. And then you got your metering, your meter mode, and your shooting mode on the sub-dials there. But I've been having a lot of fun shooting with them. I wasn't sure about mirrorless when it came out, and kind of was a late adopter to it, but I wish I was an earlier adopter to it actually, because it is so cool. There's things I took for granted, like fine-tuning lenses, focus. We used to buy devices, that were sloped and had lines on them that you would focus on the target, and then you would see in your picture what line it was really focused on. And then you had to fine-tune that setting for that lens in your camera body. Like, we don't have to do that with mirrorless. Nobody ever talks about that. Because you never had critical sharp focus. Because you were viewing and focusing through the lens, through a mirror, off a mirror, through a prism, through an eyepiece, another optic up there. And it wasn't exactly what the film plane or the sensor plane was seeing. So there was a little bit of differentiation. Now with mirrorless, you're seeing what the sensor is seeing, because literally that's where it's reading the image, and then it's duplicating that image either on the back screen or in the EVF viewfinder. So you're seeing, not only are you seeing true focus, and the camera's seeing true focus for its autofocus system, whereas before the autofocus system actually, a lot of times I think with the digital SLR, it wasn't on the sensor. The autofocus system was up in the prism somewhere, so it was a different system. So there was some differential between that and what the sensor was seeing. Now with mirrorless, there is no difference. So the Scooby's getting all riled up over there. Scooby's my guinea pig. He's doing donuts. Scooby, I'm shooting a video. Anyway, I'll try to, that's what the sound is. So mirrorless is cool. Mirrorless is really cool. No fine tuning. So the thing I immediately noticed is sharper pictures, just because Scooby, I should take the camera over there and he'd stop doing it. It's like he needs attention or something. He's going off the walls. I just gave him a carrot. Anyway, so this is my collection. The immediate benefit was sharpness to me. And I was getting more resolution, which is crazy, out of a 26 megapixel camera than my 36 megapixel full frame Nikon. It's a 26 megapixel small camera, so I shot some portraits, and it has face detect and eye detect autofocus, so it's just like razor sharp on the eyes and eyelashes, and that was a lot more beneficial than the larger sensor and the more megapixels. So I feel like it was making use of them. And I was really impressed with the resolution on these lenses. So my first lens was the 16 to 55 2.8, and still my favorite lens. I was always a prime shooter. You could have called me a Zeiss zealot, because the Zeiss full frame lenses were amazing. The last ones that they were turning out for the F mount, and Canon and Sony and everybody, but they made some awesome glass. That's the thing that I'll probably miss the most about going mirrorless, but or going Fuji. But this lens was the first zoom lens that let me believe that a zoom lens is actually usable for professional use. The 16 to 55, I call it the prime zoom. Image quality is just fantastic. My next lens was the 80mm macro. This lens is optically stabilized, so I was pretty excited about that because I didn't have any optically stabilized lenses before. So it has movable elements. You can hand hold it. Although I use a tripod for basically everything. The idea of being able to carry a camera with me and leave the tripod at home for general purpose things is kind of appealing. Because if it's the difference of not bringing the camera at all, because I have to lug a tripod and a bunch of lenses, or bringing the camera and just leaving the tripod, that's pretty cool, because then I'll have better pictures than the cell phone images, you know. My next lens was the Fujifilm, the 35mm f2, which is just, I wanted a prime, and I wanted a small compact prime. When you put that lens on the XT3 here, it's just a small pocketable camera. You could do street photography with it, although that's not really my genre. I imagine that maybe I could do that someday. The small portable uses, and it's also that whole Henry Cartier-Bresson style shooting, where he shot with one camera with a 50mm lens. That's basically the 50mm equivalent on a crop sensor camera. So it's cool to try to force yourself to use one focal length and see what you come up with. You got to move with your feet more. You got to work with composition. You got to, you get creative in your limitations, I think. But I am a gear. I'm a gear nut basically in everything I do. So I couldn't sit still having just one camera and a lens and then making my subject be the thing, because I'm very gear centric. But anyway, I needed to shoot. I didn't have a really wide angle. I mean, the 16mm on this is pretty wide, but it's not an ultra wide. So doing interior photography is a bit of a challenge when you need to get the whole room in a big space. So I had to shoot some catalog images of a house for work, and it was between the 10 to 24 or the 8 to 16, is it? I picked up the 10 to 24 because this one was $1,000 and the other one was $2,000. That's the big difference. I also don't need 2.8. I don't need a bigger aperture. So this one opens up to f4. It has optical stabilization in, so I thought this could be a cool vlogging camera, because you could go hand hold it and talk into it, because at arm's length you need an ultra wide too, because that's just too close for any other lens. Plus, the wider the angle gets, the smoother the camera shake looks. So when hand hold filming, having optical stabilization and the ultra wide I thought would be a cool option. Although on this camera I don't notice a lot of that optical stabilization. It still looks shaky to me, but it's smoother than if it didn't have it, I guess. My recent addition to the kit here is the XH2 camera. This is sort of I've been waiting for this for a couple years to come out, because I knew they were coming. I knew it was coming. They were going to develop the sensor and give us more resolution out of a crop sensor camera, and then finally we're going to have a solution where you could work professionally and shoot everything from weddings to landscapes and scenics and everything too, and have the detail that you need, and also the speed and everything. So I think that has happened with this camera body. I probably will make a video, if I get around to it, of the XH2 and all its my first impressions, at least, and a little bit about why I chose that camera. Because it's not all pros. You go away from the dial setup, so I have to get used to the PSAM dial again. You get a neat little LCD screen. You get a really nice viewfinder. The flip out screen's a little bit different, but the grip is nice because you can barely hold on to the camera and you're not going to drop it. I do like that. The battery life is great. 7 stops of image stabilization is amazing. That's my first sensor stabilized camera. So you can hand hold half a second shutter speed and it just blows away the whole shutter speed hand holdability laws, photography that we all learned, 1 over the focal length of the lens, or with these new high resolution sensors, I would say 1 over double the focal length of the lens. So it's kind of crazy because that doesn't apply anymore because we have technology. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, got the 200mm f2, which I did an unboxing for before. I shot a senior picture photo shoot because you can't find many photos taken with this. A couple camera reviewers, when they took it out for a test, you see those photos, and then you see like pictures of people's cats and stuff. So I put a few of those on Flickr, so people can see what a portrait looks like with the 200 f2. It's pretty, it's razor sharp for one, so you can use it at f2. You can hand hold it. The stabilization built into this lens is fantastic. So combined with the stabilization in here, you can hand hold it at any shutter speed you want as long as your subject's not moving. You don't want the shutter to be open so long that they blink in the middle of it, but it's razor sharp, absolutely sharp. So this camera with good light, because low light changes some things on that, and this lens is it's more resolution than I'd ever want. It's very, it's like medium format when you have to retouch skin and stuff. But actually had a retainer in, like an Invisalign. And they're like, I don't know how detailed these photos are. Should he take those out? Because I don't know if it'll get the detail of the retainer. I'm like, oh yeah, it'll get the detail of the retainer. It got I think there was a grain of pepper between his teeth, and I had to touch that out of every photo. Missed a hair or two shaving, and I had to touch that out of every photo. Plenty of detail. The flash I'm using, not to get too long-winded here, sorry for talking so much, and Scooby's rude interruption. The flash I'm using is the Godox TT685F for Fuji. This is very reminiscent of my Nikon flashes that I paid a whole lot more money for. This was relatively cheap. I'm not familiar with all the settings, but I set it on TTL and tried to get it to zoom right with the lens focal length. For whatever reason, it wasn't zooming, motorized zooming, so the flash angle wasn't changing. So I had to do it manually. I'm sure it's just a setting that I didn't know how to get to, but I've only used this twice, and I was doing a paid shoot, so I had to do what I had to do. And then I have the Godox X1 trigger, which I actually haven't used the trigger yet. So far I've only used this on camera, so just a little bit of shadow fill for daylight. But anyway, that's the camera kit as I have it. Oh, and the dedicated teleconverter, of course, that comes with the 200 f2. I shot a bunny rabbit in my yard with that on the because this isn't very long to get a small bunny rabbit. The smaller your subject, the more magnification you need. So if you're shooting birds, sparrows and things, or if you're shooting bunny rabbits, you gotta have, 200 isn't enough. Or effectively 300. You want to use that teleconverter to add 40% to your focal length. Even on a crop sensor camera. So that is one thing that an XH2 with the 40 megapixel sensor benefits you with, because of the pixel density. Because now you can crop in. You can crop in and still have detailed image. So it's like getting a longer lens. Next lens purchases are going to be probably something for portraits, because now I can finally work professionally with one camera system. I don't need my Nikon portrait lenses, so which is one of them we're shooting on now. Probably the 56 1.2. That lens I hear is amazing, or the 90mm f2. Because this lens is just a bit too long sometimes for true portraits. This lens is just a bit too Sharpie McSharperson, let's say. And it only goes open to 2.8, so the backgrounds aren't quite as creamy bocaliciousness. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. I'm not sure my camera's still recording even. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one. Comment on what you think my next lens should be, or if I should switch the kit around. Oh, I didn't mention this one, the 16 to 80. I got this one because it seemed like a good travel zoom, and it came with the camera in the kit because the body wasn't available by itself. So I figured, why not have a little travel zoom? Or for some handheld video shooting, some vlogging and stuff. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good one.